golden age of cars had a weird side that nobody ever talks about. For every legendary muscle car, there was a strange experiment that flopped. We're revealing 20 of these obscure automotive oddities. One of them was an American safety car with gullwing doors that weighed more than a tank and had a terrible reputation. 1. The Amphicar Model 770. Let's dive right in with a car that took the idea of a road trip to a whole new level. The Amphicar Model 770 was a German-built convertible from the 1960s with a very special secret. It wasn't just a car, it was also a boat. You could drive it down a boat ramp right into a lake, and with the pull of a lever, 2 propellers at the back would kick in, and you would be cruising on the water. It was a truly mind-boggling piece of engineering for its time. The name 770 came from its top speed. It could do 7 knots on the water and 70 miles per hour on land. The front wheels acted as rudders to steer it in the water, which meant it wasn't the most agile boat, but it worked. The thing is, while the idea was amazing, the reality was a bit of a compromise. On the road, it was a slow and heavy car. On the water, it was a slow and clumsy boat. It was also known for leaking, which is not a great feature for a boat. They only made a few thousand of them, making it one of the strangest and rarest convertibles ever. Floating on water is a neat trick, but our next car was famous for being so tiny it was practically a toy you could drive on the street. 2. The Peel P50. If you think smart cars are small, you haven't seen anything yet. Meet the Peel P50. The certified smallest production car in the entire world. Built in the early 1960s on the Isle of Man, this thing is more like a phone booth on wheels than an actual car. It's so small that it only has 1 door, 1 headlight, and room for just 1 person. It's a tiny little bubble of a car designed for city driving. One of the most shocking aspects of the Peel P50 is its size. It's only 54 inches long and 41 inches wide. It's so light that it doesn't even have a reverse gear. If you needed to back up, you just got out, picked the car up by a handle on the back, and physically turned it around. Imagine doing that in a parking lot. It was powered by a tiny 49 cubic centimeter engine, the same kind you'd find on a moped, so it wasn't going to win any races. It was a hilarious and fascinating attempt to solve city traffic problems, but it never really caught on. A car you can pick up is one thing, but what about a car with a wheel missing that was famously unstable? 3. The Reliant Robin. Next up is one of the most famous and joked about cars in British history, the Reliant Robin. From the outside, it looks like a fairly normal, if a bit boxy, little car from the 1970s. But what people don't notice right away is that it's missing a wheel. Instead of having 2 wheels at the front, it just has 1, right in the middle. This 3-wheel design was its most defining and most problematic feature. Truth be told, the reason for the 3-wheel design was a legal loophole in the UK. Because it had 3 wheels and weighed very little, it was legally classified as a motorcycle, not a car. This meant people could drive it with just a motorcycle license, and it was much cheaper to tax and insure. The thing is, putting 1 wheel at the front of a car makes it very unstable. Reliant Robins became famous for tipping over, especially when going around corners too fast. Despite this, they were surprisingly popular for decades because they were so cheap to own and operate. It was a car born from a clever idea that had some very wobbly results. The Robin was a cheap car for the people, but our next car was a super advanced luxury machine that mixed French style with a legendary Italian engine. 4. The Citroën SM. In the world of 1970s luxury cars, nothing looked or felt like the Citroën SM. This car was a masterpiece of French automotive design. It was a long, sleek, and futuristic-looking coupe that seemed like it had driven straight out of a science fiction movie. But the most interesting part of this car was hidden under its long hood. Citroën, the French carmaker, had actually purchased the legendary Italian sports car company Maserati. So they decided to put a powerful Maserati V6 engine in their new flagship car. This combination of French innovation and Italian power was incredible. The Citroën SM was packed with technology that was way ahead of its time. It had a unique self-centering steering system that made it incredibly stable at high speeds. It also had a special hydropneumatic suspension, which was a complicated system of hydraulics that made the ride unbelievably smooth. The car could raise and lower itself and would stay level no matter what. It was a technical marvel, but it was also very complex and expensive to repair. The SM was a bold and beautiful experiment that was just too advanced for its own good. A high-tech French car was cool, but our next car came from Germany and featured a revolutionary type of engine that almost changed the world. 5. The NSU Row 80. In the late 1960s, a German company called NSU released a car that was supposed to be the future. It was the Row 80, and it was a sleek, modern-looking sedan that won all sorts of awards for its design. But the real innovation was its engine. The Row 80 did not have regular pistons that went up and down. Instead, it had a Wankel rotary engine, a design that used a spinning triangle shape to create power. This made the engine incredibly smooth and quiet. The rotary engine had far fewer moving parts than a normal engine and could produce a lot of power from a small size. When people first drove the Row 80, they were blown away. The car was smooth, quiet, and felt like it was gliding. It seemed like every car company in the world was about to switch to rotary engines. The thing is, the technology was too new. The early rotary engines in the Row 80 had a huge problem with the seals on the spinning rotors. They would wear out very quickly, and the engines would need to be rebuilt. The car got a terrible reputation for being unreliable, and it nearly bankrupted the company. A car with a weird engine is one thing, but our next car was built with a totally different mission in mind: safety, and it had the doors of a supercar. 6. The Bricklin SV1. In the mid-1970s, an American businessman named Malcolm Bricklin had a vision. He wanted to build the safest car in the world. The result was the Bricklin SV1, where SV stood for safety vehicle. This car was a strange mix of safety features and sports car styling. It had a sleek, wedge-shaped body made of fiberglass, and its most famous feature was its power-operated gullwing doors, which opened upwards like on a Mercedes or a DeLorean. The car was built like a tank. It had a strong steel roll cage built into the frame and massive bumpers that were designed to absorb impacts. The idea was to create a car that was both safe and cool. The problem was that all those safety features made the car incredibly heavy, and the famous gullwing doors were a nightmare. The hydraulic system that lifted them was slow and unreliable, and if the car's battery went flat, you could get trapped inside. It was a bold idea, but the car was slow, heavy, and full of problems. It was a safety car that came with its own set of risks. A heavy safety car from America is interesting, but what about a tiny lightweight car from Japan that was so slow it was actually dangerous on American highways? 7. The Subaru 360. Long before Subaru was known for its all-wheel drive rally cars, they made a very different kind of vehicle. In the 1960s, they brought a car to the United States called the Subaru 360. This was a K car, a type of vehicle that was popular in Japan because it was tiny and had a very small engine, which made it cheap to own. But what worked in the crowded streets of Tokyo was a disaster on the big, fast highways of America. The Subaru 360 was comically small and powered by a tiny two-stroke engine. It was famously slow. Its top speed was barely 60 miles per hour, and it took over 30 seconds to get there. One of the most shocking aspects was its safety, or lack thereof. A famous consumer report at the time called it the most unsafe car on the market. It was so light and flimsy that it offered almost no protection in a crash. They were marketed with the slogan "cheap and ugly," which was at least honest. The Subaru 360 was a huge failure in the US, but it was the first step for a brand that would later become a massive success. That car was a rolling piece of art, but our next one was a Swiss supercar, so rare and powerful that almost nobody has ever seen one in person. 8. The Monteverdi High 450. In the world of supercars, you have the famous Italian names like Ferrari and Lamborghini. But for a brief moment in the 1970s, a tiny Swiss carmaker named Monteverdi tried to join the party with a monster of a car called the High 450. The word high is German for shark, and this car definitely looked like a predator. It was a low, wide, and aggressive-looking machine with a powerful American twist. The most shocking thing about the High was its engine. Tucked behind the driver was a massive 426 Hemi 5.8 engine from Chrysler, one of the most powerful and legendary muscle car engines ever made. This huge American engine in a sleek European body was a wild combination. The car was said to have a top speed of over 180 miles per hour, which was absolutely insane for the time. Truth be told, the car was more of a dream than a reality. It was incredibly expensive to build, and only a couple of them were ever made. It remains one of the rarest and most mysterious supercars of all time. A Swiss car with American power is a wild mix, but our next car flipped that script. It was an Italian muscle car with a good old American V8. 9. The Isogrifo. The Isogrifo is one of the coolest cars you've probably never heard of. In the 1960s, a small Italian company that used to make refrigerators and bubble cars decided to build a world-class grand touring car. They hired some of the best designers and engineers in Italy to create a beautiful and powerful machine. The result was the Isogrifo, a car with the sleek, beautiful body of an Italian sports car, but the heart of an American muscle car. Instead of developing their own expensive and complicated engine, they did something brilliant. They bought big, powerful V8 engines from Chevrolet and Ford and put them in their cars. This gave the Isogrifo the best of both worlds. It had stunning Italian looks and a reliable, powerful, and easy-to-fix American engine. It was a recipe for success. The Grifo was fast, beautiful, and handled well. It was a true competitor to Ferrari and Maserati, but at a lower price. It was a perfect blend of European style and American horsepower that has become a legend among car collectors. The Grifo was a classic front-engine sports car, but our next car from France tried a different approach with its engine in the middle and a very strange roof. 10. The Matra 530. In the late 1960s, the French company Matra, which was known for making military weapons and race cars, decided to build a fun and affordable sports car for the street. The result was the Matra 530, a quirky and unique little car with some very interesting features. It had a futuristic-looking fiberglass body and a mid-engine layout, which means the engine was placed behind the driver for better balance. This was something you usually only found on expensive, exotic cars. What really made the Matra 530 stand out was its roof. It had a targa top, which means you could remove the panel over the seats to have an open-air experience. But it also had a strange design that made it look a bit like a pickup truck with the roof off. The car was powered by a V4 engine from a Ford Taunus, so it wasn't super powerful, but it was light and fun to drive. The Matra 530 was a cool and unusual car that showed a lot of clever thinking, even if its looks were a bit challenging for some people. A French sports car is one thing, but our next car is a quirky little machine from Sweden with a name that sounds like a poem. 11. The Saab Sonett. Saab was always a company that did things its own way. The Swedish automaker, which also built airplanes, was known for its strange but innovative cars. In the 1970s, they made a small and quirky sports car called the Saab Sonett 3. This little car was a perfect example of Saab's unique style. It had a long, pointy nose with pop-up headlights and a very short back end that opened up like a hatchback. The body of the Sonett was made of fiberglass to keep it lightweight, and it was powered by a V4 engine. One of the most shocking things for people who drove it was how it felt. Because Saab's front-wheel drive cars were famous for how they handled in the snow, the Sonett also had front-wheel drive, which was very unusual for a sports car at the time. It was a tiny, weird, and wonderful car that was full of character. It wasn't the fastest sports car around, but it was definitely one of the most interesting. A quirky Swedish car is cool, but our next car was an American machine that was so strange-looking it was nicknamed the Flying Fishbowl. 12. The AMC Matador Coupe. In the mid-1970s, the American car company AMC was known for making some pretty weird cars, and the Matador Coupe might be the weirdest of them all. While the Matador sedan was a normal, boring family car, the two-door coupe version was something else entirely. The designers were told to make something exciting and different, and they certainly did. The Matador Coupe had a long, flowing design with huge, round headlight tunnels that made it look like a bug. The car was incredibly curvy and had no sharp edges. Its most distinctive feature was its long hood and short rear deck, which was a popular sports car look at the time. But the car was huge. It was a massive personal luxury coupe, and its styling was very polarizing. Some people loved it, and some people hated it. It even had a moment of fame when it was featured as the villain's car in a James Bond movie. The Matador Coupe was a bold and strange design that showed what can happen when a car company tries way too hard to be different. That car was a styling experiment, but our next car is one of the most bizarre and over-the-top luxury cars ever conceived, a car that didn't even have doors. 13. The Mose Ostentatienne Opera Sedan. Get ready for what might be the single strangest car on this entire list. In 1967, a man named Bruce Mose decided to build what he thought was the ultimate safety luxury car. He called it the Mose Ostentatienne Opera Sedan. The name is a mouthful, and the car is an eyeful. This thing was gigantic, bizarre, and completely over the top in every way. One of the most shocking things about it is that it had no side doors. To get in, you had to walk around to the back of the car where a single huge door opened upwards, revealing a set of steps that led into the cabin. The reason for this supposedly was for safety, to protect from side impacts. The car was built on a massive truck frame and had huge tires. The driver sat in the very middle, and the whole thing was filled with weird luxury features. It was a truly insane machine that looked like something out of a cartoon. It was a one-of-a-kind vehicle built by a man with a very strange vision. A car with no doors is wild, but our next car was another three-wheeled oddity that looked like a bright orange piece of cheese. 14. The Bond Bug. If you wanted to get noticed in the 1970s, this was the car for you. The Bond Bug was a tiny three-wheeled British car that was all about fun and style. It had a futuristic wedge-shaped body that was almost always painted in a very bright orange color. It was one of the most cheerful and eye-catching cars ever made. Like the Reliant Robin, it had a single wheel at the front and two at the back, which meant it was also classified as a motorcycle for legal reasons. Instead of doors, the Bond Bug had a canopy that lifted up and forward, just like on a fighter jet. You and your passenger would then climb into the small cockpit. It was powered by a 4-cylinder engine from Reliant, so it was actually pretty zippy for its size. The Bond Bug wasn't meant to be a practical car. It was a toy, a fashion statement on wheels for young people who wanted something different. It was a burst of color and fun in the often gray world of British motoring. A fun-loving three-wheeler is cool, but our next car had a much more serious and rugged history, a military vehicle that was sold to the public. 15. The Volkswagen Type 181 The Thing. In the late 1960s, Volkswagen took its famous Beetle platform and created something completely different. It was the Type 181, a strange, boxy, and utilitarian vehicle that was originally designed for the German military. It was a simple, tough, and rugged machine meant for off-road use. Then, in the 1970s, Volkswagen had a brilliant idea. They decided to sell a civilian version to the public, and in America, they gave it the perfect name, The Thing. The Thing was about as basic as a car could get. It had a simple, flat-sided body, removable doors, a folding windshield, and a very basic interior that you could hose out. It was a convertible, but its folding soft top was more like a tent than a proper roof. People loved it because it was so weird and versatile. It was like a grown-up Lego car. It wasn't fast and it wasn't comfortable, but it was fun. The Thing was a military machine that became a quirky and beloved beach cruiser. A German military vehicle is tough, but our next car was an Italian machine built for the dirt, a rally champion that was sold to the public. 16. The Fiat X1/9. In the 1970s, Fiat, a company known for making small family cars, decided to build a true affordable mid-engine sports car. The result was the Fiat X1/9, and it was a masterpiece of design. It was a tiny wedge-shaped car that looked like a miniature Ferrari. It was designed by the famous Italian design house Bertone, and it was absolutely beautiful. It had a targa top for open-air driving and those classic pop-up headlights that every cool car had in that era. The X1/9 was not just about looks, because its engine was placed in the middle of the car just like a race car. It had incredible balance and handling. It was an absolute joy to drive on a curvy road. The engine itself wasn't very powerful, but because the car was so light, it felt quick and nimble. The thing that really made it special was that it brought the exotic mid-engine layout to the masses. It was a car that gave normal people the chance to feel like they were driving a supercar, and it remains one of the most beloved and stylish small sports cars ever made. That Italian sports car was a beauty, but our next car was a British brute that combined Italian style with a massive American engine. 17. The Jensen Interceptor. The Jensen Interceptor is a car that lives up to its cool name. It was a British grand touring car from the late 60s and 70s that was a perfect mix of elegance and raw power. The body was designed by an Italian company, giving it a sleek and sophisticated look. Its most famous feature was the huge curved rear window that also acted as the trunk lid, making it one of the first high-performance hatchbacks. But the real story of the Interceptor was under the hood. Like the ISO Grifo we talked about earlier, the British company Jensen decided to use big, powerful V8 engines from Chrysler. This gave the car monstrous performance. It was a true British muscle car, a comfortable and luxurious GT car that could go incredibly fast in a straight line. It was the kind of car a rock star or a secret agent would drive. It was also one of the first production cars to offer all-wheel drive for better traction, a feature that was way ahead of its time. The Jensen Interceptor was a beautiful beast. A British car with a glass hatch is unique, but our next car, also from Britain, was made from a very unusual material for a car: wood. 18. The Marcos GT. In the world of small, independent British sports car makers, Marcos was one of the most interesting. For years, they built cars that were not only fast and stylish, but also had a very strange secret. The chassis of many of their early cars, including the beautiful Marcos GT from the 1960s, was made out of wood. That's right, the frame of the car was constructed from laminated plywood, much like an airplane from an earlier era. The reason for this was that wood was light, strong, and cheap. The company's founder was an engineer who had experience with wooden aircraft design. The result was a car that was incredibly lightweight, which made it very fast and agile, even with a small engine. The Marcos GT was a stunningly beautiful car with a very long hood and a low, sleek body. It looked like a Jaguar E-Type that had been shrunk. It was a true enthusiast's car, a testament to clever engineering and out-of-the-box thinking. A car made of wood is strange, but what about a luxury sedan from behind the Iron Curtain that had a massive V8 engine in the back? 19. The Tatra 613. When you think of luxury cars from the 1970s, you probably think of Mercedes-Benz or Cadillac. You probably don't think of Czechoslovakia. But that country was home to Tatra, a company that made some of the most advanced and bizarre cars in the world. Their flagship model was the Tatra 613, a big, imposing sedan that was used by government officials and dignitaries. The most shocking thing about the Tatra was its engine layout. Like a Porsche 911 or a Volkswagen Beetle, the Tatra 613 had its engine in the back. But this wasn't some small four-cylinder engine. This was a big air-cooled V8 engine. A rear-engine V8 is an incredibly rare and strange configuration for a car, and it gave the Tatra a unique driving feel. The car was designed by an Italian design firm, so it actually looked quite stylish and modern. The Tatra 613 was a fascinating piece of engineering from a part of the world that most car fans know very little about. A rear-engine V8 is a wild idea, but our final car comes from Australia, and it was made by a company that was famous for something completely different. 20. The Lightburn Zeta. We end our journey down under in Australia with a car that has a truly bizarre backstory. In the 1960s, a company called Lightburn & Company, which was famous for making cement mixers and washing machines, decided to get into the car business. Their creation was the Lightburn Zeta, a tiny and very basic car that was designed to be cheap transportation for the masses. The Zeta was a strange little machine. It was built with a fiberglass body to save costs, and it was powered by a tiny two-stroke engine. The car was full of weird quirks. For example, to go in reverse, you had to turn the engine off and restart it backwards. The sedan version had no rear hatch, so to put things in the back, you had to take out the back seat. The company had no experience building cars, and it showed. The Lightburn Zeta was a commercial disaster and is often called one of the worst cars ever made. But it's a fantastic story of a company that decided to take a huge risk and build something completely outside of their comfort zone.